I just wanted to talk a little bit about when is it appropriate to use a t-test, and also some of the drawbacks. So if we go ahead and look at the chart from the book, it says, except in the case of small samples, the condition that the data are an SRS from the population is more important than the population distribution is normal. So basically, we want to make sure that our sample is properly randomized from the population and does not have any other forms of bias. And it's not that important that it's normal comparatively. And then what it says is that, if we have a particular sample size, it will also affect the validity of the results of the t-distribution. So it says, if the sample size is less than 15, it says use t-procedures if the data is close to normal, roughly symmetric, and so forth. It says if the data is clearly skewed or outliers or is non-normal, you do not want to use a t-distribution. So basically, if our data set is not normal and it's small, don't use t-distributions, it will not be good. Now, if the sample size is at least 15, usually people say in the range of 15 to 40, it says t-procedures can be used except in the presence of strong outliers or strong skewness. So, like say you have a set of 30 data points, or like looking at some of the data we did before. Like this data was 24. So it's large enough to, where we don't care if it's normal, but basically it can't be strongly skewed. Like looking at this one, the data, if you were to plot this data, it's roughly normal, but it's not perfect. But let's say we had 2 or 3 data points that were 100, or 2 or 3 data points that were 20. We would say those are strong outliers. Or, again, if the data was more skewed, if there were like a lot of 70s and almost no 50s, then what we're kind of concluding about this is the t-procedures we probably shouldn't be using if that data is not... it doesn't have to be normal. It just can't be strongly skewed or have, a ton of outliers. And then if we're getting into large samples, anything more than 40, basically it says you can use the t-procedures regardless, even if it's clearly skewed or if there are outliers. So basically, summarizing what this is saying, t-procedures are great when you have large samples. It doesn't matter if the population is normal at all. Again, basically as a result of the central limit theorem. And when you do have small sample sizes, it's still okay to use t. You just want to be a little bit careful that the data is roughly normal. Again, the smaller it is, the more normal it needs to be. This is not like a perfect rule, just as like a rule of thumb to kind of know when to use it. And then if we're dealing with experiments where we're comparing differences, that's kind of the next thing I wanted to open up in chapter 21. What if we're comparing 2 different samples? How do we kind of tell the difference between them and in the statistical methodology? And we're going to adjust our procedures to test differences as well, which is kind of what this is saying about matched pairs procedures.